Joining us now for more is Marcel von Aulock, who is CEO of Tsogo Sun. Hi, Marcel.
Hi.
The numbers, there's quite a big sort of gap in them, if you like. Your turnover up 39% to 9 billion rand, which is a nice number. But you do say like-for-like growth 5%. Now, that indicates a lot of corporate activity in the period under review.
Yeah, we had the merger of Gold Reef that brought 2.2 billion revenue into the 9 billion. The merger has been very good for us. It's given us scale, and that's reflected in those numbers. The 5% itself is two tails. Gaming showed some good growth in the year, particularly in the second half. And hotels showed nice growth, but compared to the prior year we had the World Cup, came out with revenue flat at 1.6 billion for the hotel business. So there's a lot of ups and downs in it, but the net answer out of the whole lot is that we grew EBITDA 7% with hotels down on the prior year with World Cup. So it's a set of numbers we're very comfortable with.
Just to give us the context, I mean, we don't hear much about the World Cup anymore. This is the sort of dribs and drabs of it at the end. How much did you increase on your previous year when the World Cup happened?
Well, to give you an idea, the first quarter of this year, occupancies were down 5% on the prior year. And for the balance of the 9 months of the year, occupancies were up 5%. So the first quarter was pretty heavily impacted by it. The World Cup was good for the industry because I think we would have had a far deeper trough in the prior year if we hadn't had that buoyancy from the World Cup that masked some pretty awful trading for hotels. We've definitely seen a recovery in hotels in the second half of the year. It's by no means boom times, but it's in good condition.
Is your sense that recovery is a natural part of the South African environment, or has the World Cup given some impetus? Because everyone said the World Cup will boost us into another kind of level, but it doesn't seem to have.
No, I think it's part of the normal SA environment, particularly in our business. We're 90% corporate hotel trading, and in order for our hotel business to do well, South African corporates have to travel, and that's not World Cup related. And that market is still under a fair amount of pressure.
The Gold Reef Tsogo Sun amalgamation, two big companies. What do you do in a situation like that? Are there things that you impose so that there's uniformity? Do you let them get on with it, but they report their money differently?
The integration has gone brilliantly for us. So what we've smoothly implemented, it's completely put in place. The one part that was missing was identity, and that's why we relaunched our brand in April of this year, because it needed to unify both our hotel and gaming business as well as the two gaming businesses that were Tsogo and Gold Reef into one. And that was important not just for the market to understand who we are, but also internally. We've got 18,000 employees who needed to understand what this group consists of, and that branding's achieved that.
Acquisitions, you talk about an increased interest in Suncoast to 90%, Hotel Formula One, your interest there to 100%. The Grace Hotel, well known in Johannesburg, now being relaunched as 54 on Bath in July. You've got the Garden Court at Mill Park. This is a lot of stuff to swallow. If the prospects for the sector are moderate, are you going to be able to sustain all this?
We've been in hotels for 40 years and we've got no intention of getting out of it. So at a time like this where we've got strong cash flows and a very strong balance sheet is an opportunity for us to acquire assets probably half the price of what they would have been on offer 2 years ago. And as long as you keep your gearing under control, we'll be here for another 10, 15 years. So recovery might take longer or shorter, but those assets will serve us well in time.
You mentioned casinos and hotels better in the second half. Is that about second halves, or is there actually an improvement that is going to be sustained?
No, it's actually an improvement. Our earnings should be relatively flat over the whole year. We saw an uptick in consumer spend in the second half of the year, which is good for the casinos, and we saw an uptick in accommodation demand. And that demand hasn't come through for at least 4 or 5 years.
So that means companies are booking more conferences and the executives are travelling more, which suggests better economic activity in the country.
Yeah, the activities that we look at is not just our core casino win, but we can see it across restaurants, theatres, the cinemas are doing well, the conference facilities are being booked out. So there's a general uptick in activity levels. We are nervous about sustainability of it because the world is by no means out of trouble, but we have seen an improvement.
I always think gambling is an interesting one. You know, it's supposed to be discretionary. It's not something, but there are people for whom it's their first expenditure before their bond. There are issues around that. We've had cigarettes nailed by the authorities. Alcohol has been under pressure recently. There are social issues around gaming. You pose that as a risk, I think, and then the consequent regulatory environment changing.
Yeah, regulatory environment for us really revolves around taxes. Because it's a lucrative industry, government will try and increase taxes, which is something you have to deal with. They give you a license, as long as it's on a coordinated basis. Problem gambling is not something that is too concerning because it's very well managed in the industry. The Gaming Review Commission released this report during the course of the last year, and the casinos came out in pretty good nick there. So the social issues of gambling are under good control.
Do you expect more pressure though? Because the government is under pressure in these areas, and sometimes they try to control things which are easy to control in the sense that you can increase the tax, you can put pressure on for more social responsibility. I mean, the industry says it's doing all these things right, but you just still see the little kids in the motor cars outside the casino at midnight.
If you ban alcohol, will you have less alcoholism? I mean, it's the same type of argument with gambling. But we try and stick to the research stats, and we know that problem gambling is less than 1% in the population. Increased taxes will come and go as long as the regulation environment allows us to grow. So they continue to let us invest in businesses. As I say, we're one company, we employ 18,000 people and pay 2 billion rand a year in tax. And it's easy money for government because the collection cost is zero.
Prospects ahead, you've had all this acquisitive activity. Is there going to be more? And where do you see the market in a year's time? And do you expect another 5% increase rather as you had in the second half?
Almost impossible to forecast the revenue growth because that is determined by largely how the economy is going to perform. We will follow the economic growth in the country. The demand for hotels is driven by corporates, demand for gaming is driven by consumer spend. As far as the company goes, we're generating just under 2 billion a year in free cash flow. We have significant opportunities to reinvest in our business, and our stated dividend policy is 50% of earnings, hence we declared 60 cents dividend this year. We'll give half to shareholders, keep half in the business. To the extent we can't invest it, we'll pay it out. But we've got a pipeline of opportunities that we're chasing, and we're one of the few companies in the industry at the moment that doesn't have high gearing levels and has strong cash flow. So we're taking advantage of it as much as we can.
On a detail in your operation, I'm interested in that Grace. It's a place I used to go to, and it clearly fell on hard times. You're relaunching it, as I said, on 54 on Bath. What are you going to do differently? Because there were clearly issues with trade, where it is. I don't know what the problems were, but how are you going to solve them?
There's two things you mustn't do in hotels. One, don't overgear a hotel business. And two, make sure you watch for product obsolescence. Hotels will go through cycles. If you're too in debt, you can't handle the downturn in the cycle. There's nothing inherently wrong with the hotel. It's in a good location. Product needed a refurb, so we've put an additional 20 million in. We've completely refurbed the building. But it was simply a case of it wasn't structured properly. It was on a lease with an operator who didn't have any cash. Whereas we can own it, we can carry it for a while, and when good times return, we'll make good money out of it. Yeah. Gearing is a danger in hotel business. You need to be able to handle the cycles up and down.
Interesting problems in an interesting sector. That was Marcel von Aulock, who is CEO of Tsogo Sun.